Hello everyone. Today we will start with writing a small tool with the shader graph API or the graph API from Unity, where we will be able to make some dialogues for our NPCs, because the next thing we want to implement is NPCs to get some life into the game. And I have something prepared to show you how it will look like at the end. We have an entry point where the basically behavior of an NPC gets started. Then the NPC can say something like hi in this case, and we can answer the NPC. We can add multiple choices and remove them. And then we can drag to other interaction with the NPC, or we can add backend calls. So we have a backend call which will check if the quest is finished for intro. We don't have the quest backend system yet, but this is already preparing for the future. And if the quest has been finished, then the NPC asks you how he can help you, and the only thing you can say is no thanks, because there's nothing more for this NPC to do with you. And then this will basically end because there's no next interaction. But if you haven't finished the quest yet, you can ask where you are. The NPC will kind enough tell you where you are and who you are in their world. And then you will receive the quest rewards, and the NPC will end the conversation basically with you. We can save and load those behaviors. This is completely working. So when I remove that, and maybe I want to load that again, then everything is working in that regard for now. And this is basically saved with JSON.NET in a JSON format. We could use scriptable objects in the Unity format, but I'm not sure if I will ever load that in the backend, and having it in JSON, then I can pretty much load it everywhere. There's the blackboard where we can add variables, but this is more me playing around with the API that Unity provides, because I don't think we will need them. We will more likely have some brackets open and player.name and brackets closed if we want to be able to give variables into the text. I don't think so. The same with the minimap. I don't need it, but it's a nice feature with the scroll bar. You can scroll around, and it's really playing around with the graph API that Unity provides. So let's look at the API itself. You will find a lot of things inside. Let me increase the text size and make some space. So we have a lot of classes here, but there's a lot of boilerplate we have to do. Let's check out Dialog Node. This is the more complex node where you also have a button to add multiple choices and everything. And this basically works like this. We inherit from a base node, which inherits from node. Node is basically a Unity experimental graph view node. So it's the base UI element we are inheriting from. And we want to give every node a GUID basically to distinguish themselves, and every node will have this input port. An input port is basically this small button where you can connect things to. So basically everything I created a dialog node. It will have this input port. That's our base node, and dialog node will increase that with a text value, a text field, a list of output ports. So when you create more choices, you press the button add choice, then more ports will be added to the output port. And in this special case, because we are able to remove ports, when I remove this port, then this connection has to be removed also. This is handled in the Unity API differently. It's handled in the graph view, and this way the dialog node needs the graph view just to delete the edges on remove port. Here you see it, then I get the edge list with the port I'm deleting, and I'm disconnecting basically the edges on remove port. Then we have add port, which basically is the node itself, and then you can always do instantiate port, and it works like that it has a direction. If it's an output port, then it's direction output, and if it's an input port, then it's direction input. And for the capacity, there's single. Single means there can only be one. So this output port can't connect to multiple ones, so I can only connect it here, and if I connect it to another one, it will switch instead of having multiple connection. The input port on the other side is multiple, so there can be multiple choices which lead to the same outcome in our diagram. So when we check here, the input port is created, then it's multi. Then this node, or these nodes, they have to distinguish, they have 4 containers. One is the input container, which is where the input port here lives. One is the output container where the output port lives. Then it has a content container, which is at the bottom where this multi-line text field is, and it has a title container. This is where the bottom is. And we can create a text field, which in our case is multi-line, and if the value changes in the text field, we will set the title and everything in the node. And then we add it to the main container. It's not called content container, it's called main container. We add the text field. That's why you see the text field here. And we can write text like that, and it will be set in the node properly. The only thing what I do, I set just the first line in the title. So when I change the first line, the title will change, else it will look ugly because the title doesn't scale vertically. So we have this button to add choices to the button container, and it just calls add port, and add port creates the output port and creates also a text field next to the output port where we can change the name of the port, basically what the answer in our case for the player, and we add a button to remove the choice. That's why you see remove choice. Then we have the ability to change the port name via the text field, and then we have the output port. That's basically how those nodes work. And this dialog node is the most complex one. The backend call node is a little bit easier because it doesn't have dynamic output. We just have true or false. Maybe we will split this up and have a so-called if or loop, a node where we can do branching and everything, but for now everything is fine the way this is conceived. So the concept should be fine. What you have to do is you have to refresh the UI elements when you add ports and everything. This is something which you learn the hard way most likely. And then you can set the position and everything. And yeah, also those nodes in my case are able to also provide you with the given data for save in the JSON file, how they will look like. And we check if the port is connected. If not, then we give an empty GUID, and if it's connected, we give the GUID of the next node. So we also have in our data in JSON always referencing the next node. The reason why we do it that way is that the output port is singled, so it can happen. It can just have one connection, so it's easy to save. It's just one GUID, and we know which node is handling that. And then we have a comment group, which is this group block here where you are able to group things. Looks like this isn't grouped in there. Let's remove that again, so we can let's just load it faster. And it looks like this isn't in there. Let's save that again. And let's load again and check if that's working. No. So we have a bug. Let's fix this bug real fast. I think I have an idea where it is, and I can explain a little bit more. We have this behavior graph, which is basically the editor window itself. So this is the window here basically. And we added a menu item, so this has to be static because it's called from the editor itself and it doesn't instantiate the window. And what we do is we just create an instance of our graph. And then we will show that, which will show the window itself. And then we add multiple things here. We add the toolbar for our save and load button. That's straightforward, I guess. We add the minimap, we add the blackboard, and we add the search window. The only thing which for me wasn't straightforward is the search window, because that's basically this window here. When you create a node, you can do that with space or right click, and it should even, yeah, you can right click create node, and then we have this diagram, which is the search window. And they are, all three of them are basically capabilities Unity is already providing for you. I don't do much. I just give them the data which variables exist, and also create those variables in the blackboard and position them to the right position. But apart from that, everything is working on their own. Let's take a look at the node search window. You can find it here. That this has to inherit from scriptable object. I don't like that, but that's the case. And then we create this search tree, and if one entry is selected, then we get this user data, and I created an enum, and depending on the enum, I create in the mouse position the according node. So when you click here, this function gets called here, and the node gets executed, created. Sorry. This has to be a scriptable object, because when you do search window open, it asks for a scriptable object. But it's working this way, so I wouldn't bother too much. For the minimap, it's pretty straightforward. We create a minimap, we say it's movable, and because if we don't say that, it's not. And then we add it to the graph view, and it's there. And the graph view is basically the bread and butter, because that's the view we developed ourselves. I tried to keep it as clean as possible, but this is where a lot of mess is happening. We have this manipulators, which is basically, for example, rectangle selector gives you the ability to select multiple things via rectangle, and that's how this works in Unity. You add manipulators, and they give features to the screen, basically, like setup zoom and everything. And we have two functions which are the main important one, which is on graph changed. This is basically loading. So when our graph data changes or we load, then this comes in, and this is basically our load function inside the graph view when it has to load a different graph. And we have here child nodes, and there's one node missing. We can check that real fast if it's a load or a save issue. So when I load now, there are 3 child nodes, which is wrong. So we have a save issue because when on load the data is wrong, it's obviously safe. And because we have 4 things inside of it, and let's check the save one. So on graph changed is basically loading. We create the nodes based on the data. It's pretty straightforward stuff. We have to recreate those edges, which is a little bit trickier. And then we create the comment block. Let's rename it block because we don't, it's not a comment, it's basically group. So, and on the other side, sorry for jumping around, we have update graph, which is the other side, which is UI elements to our data. And we have here graph comments, and there has to be a bug. So let's rename that. Let's not rename that because I think group is already used by Unity. So we have comment get data, and we check if something is dialog node. That's the reason why only dialog nodes are inside our data, which is obviously wrong. We also want to have our backend call nodes, they are called. So when we load again, it's not in there because it's not saved correctly. And now when we save it, it should be fine. Load it now and everything's working. So on recording, we fix a small bug. So every node is handling the data itself. Basically, the other way it's not the case, which is a decision I made because when you fill the other nodes, you often have to access the graph view to create elements like the edges and everything. And if I put that in the nodes, then the nodes depend on the graph and the graph depends on the nodes, and we have a circular reference, which I don't like. So that's why I kept it in the graph view for now. Maybe I will create a provider class like this Blackboard provider. This will be the cleanest, I guess. And if you check the source code from Shader Graph, which is open source by Unity, which is using the whole API, then you see they always do those provider things. The Blackboard provider is basically an easier version of what you will find in the source code from Unity. This is it from the Unity side. Feel free to check out the source code, and if you have any questions, join my Discord or leave a comment. I really answer every question on Discord and in the YouTube comments, and if you like the video, please like it. This helps a lot. So for the data itself, we have the properties, which is basically the Blackboard properties. I currently inherit from iBehavior Graph property, which I created, which is pretty empty. The reason for that is if I want to support multiple types. So if I want to have an int property, I want to have an int type and everything. This is how Shader Graph is doing it. It might be complete overkill for what we do now, but we can always make it simpler in that regard. Then we have our comment block, which I will be the group data. We have our group data where the groups are inside, and if you want to know how I do it, I press Control and then double tap. I hold Control and then I double tap R, then this is basically rename. And we have this dictionary of nodes, which is basically GUID and then the node data. And the node data is just GUID and position, and then we have the data for each and every node. For example, for dialog nodes, we also have the text that the NPC is saying, and then we have the choice data, which is just the text of the choice, so what the player is answering and what the next node is. For backend call, we have the call name, then we have the next node for true and the next node for false. So it's quite easy to add things here. We have the entry point node, which is just the start. That's this one, and it just tells you where the next node is. So that's pretty straightforward. And the JSON Serializer from Newtonsoft is able to work with base classes and basically interfaces. The only thing you have to do, that's pretty straightforward. If we go to save and load, you have to give it the ability to do type name handling. And if you set it to auto, it will handle that just fine. You have to do it for load and save. And what we do for save, we have editor utility save panel, which basically gives us the ability to choose a save location, and we have open panel to have a load, this loading screen, and then we call onGraph changed when we load, which we basically load the data, and like I said before, it will onGraph change and it will update everything in the UI. And the other way around, for save, we update the graph, so they give their latest data to our variable, and then we basically get we basically save it. And if we look into, for example, save, you see this save screen, and then you can select and it will write the JSON inside it. And I actually messed up because I saved an empty file now. Not too bad. So we can recreate that real fast. We don't have to recreate it completely, I guess. So the NPC is saying hi. Maybe we need to add an NPC name to that. When you use it, you will sometimes find out what is missing. Then we say quest dot is finished intro. So if it is finished, the only thing the NPC says, can I help you? And you say, the only thing you can say is no thanks. And if you didn't finish the quest, you can say no thanks. And you can say, where am I? And if you say, where am I? He says, you are in the world. Basically, what this world is, the name. And you are the chosen one. And then you might be wondering, then you finish the quest. This is where he gives you your first ability, basically. And then he will say, take this. And leave. So let's save that. Let's NPC name, let's put his name as a variable here. This way we can only have one NPC saying things, and if we add a field to our dialog nodes, then we will be able to have multiple conversations with multiple people. I think we will add that, but not for now. So when we save that, we can actually check what's inside the JSON. So we can open the file. I made it prettier. We could also, and we might do that, which is a better idea, I think. On save, I think we can have JSON.NET save the file in a more readable way. Yes, reloaded. Yes. So JSON.NET is now saving it better. So JSON.NET will save in this properties file the type, and that's how it will is able to work with base classes and interfaces when you give it the type handling, and when you give it formatting intended, then it will format it, not everything in one line, which makes the file bigger, but I rather have a readable file than have a save some bytes here and there. And then we have our nodes, which is basically just a GUID. The start node, the entry point node, always has an empty GUID because it's easier to use it that way. And then you see start, and then it has this next node where it's pointing to. And this next node is in our case a dialog node, and the NPC says hi, and you have the ability to say hi, and then the next node where this is pointing to. So then we have to check where is this node, fd53 here at the bottom. This is a backend call node, so we have the backend call, and in true it will jump to that node and false to the other one. That's how this whole file works. And I haven't finished writing the part where we have an actual NPC where we can talk to, and this diagram is processed, but that's the next thing we will do. And this is it for today. That's all I have for today. I wish you all a great weekend. I'm really sorry that the video comes out late, but I got corona vaccinated, and I reacted not so good about that yesterday, so I wasn't able to finish that yesterday. But I hope that's fine for everyone. Last but not least, I want to thank my Patreon Julian for supporting me. Have a good weekend. Bye.